In 1888, Jack the Ripper terrorized London, murdering at least 5 women and mutilating their corpses in unusual ways, hinting that the assassin was well versed in human anatomy. In both criminal case files and contemporaneous media reports, the murderer was referred to as the Whitechapel Murderer and the Leather Apron. Jack the Ripper is now regarded as one of England's and the world's most infamous villains. The killer, however, was never captured nor recognized. Or is it? In the mid-19th centuries, an influx of Irish immigrants swelled the population of Britain's main cities, notably London's East End. With a population of almost 80,000 inhabitants by 1888, the parish of Whitechapel in London East End had become more congested. Work and housing conditions deteriorated, resulting in the emergence of a sizable economic underclass. 55% of children in the East End died before reaching the age of 5. Robbery, violence, and drunkenness were all too common, and chronic poverty drove many women into prostitution in order to make ends meet. Whitechapel's economic troubles were mirrored by an upstick in social clashes, anti-Semitism, criminality, nativism, racism, social turmoil, and immense hardship reshaped public perception of Whitechapel as a notorious den of immorality. Between 3 April 1888 and 13 February 1891, the London Metropolitan Police Service investigated 11 separate killings, which were dubbed the Whitechapel Murders in the police docket. Opinions differ on whether these killings should be attributed to the same perpetrator, although the Canonical Five, or 5 of the 11 Whitechapel murders, are generally accepted to be the work of Jack the Ripper. According to most experts, the Ripper's method of operations included serious slash wound to the neck, following by extensive stomach and genital area mutilation, the removal of internal organs, and eventually face mutilations. The first 2 cases in the Whitechapel murders file, those of Emma Elizabeth Smith and Martha Tabram, are not among the Canonical Five. Although the tabloids link this assault to the other fatalities, most writers attribute Smith and Martha Tabram death to ordinary East End gang violence unrelated to the Jack the Ripper investigations. Many specialists do not link Tabram murder to the succeeding killing because of the variation in the wound pattern. The Canonical Five Jack the Ripper victims are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Mary Ann Nichols' corpse was found at 3:40 a.m. on Friday, August 31, 1888 in Bucks Row, in Whitechapel. 2 large cuts slashed her neck, one of which went all the way down into her spine. Her vagina had been stabbed twice, and a major, jagged incision in her lower belly had partially torn open, enabling her intestine to protrude. The same knife had also created many further incisions on both sides of her belly, all of which were made in downward thrusting motions. 1 week later, on Saturday 8 September 1888, around 6 a.m., Annie Chapman's corpse was found on the stairs to the entrance of 29 Hanbury Street, Spitalfields. As in the instance of Mary Ann Nichols, the neck was severed by 2 deep incisions. Her stomach had been completely split apart, with a portion of stomach meat placed over her left shoulder, and a piece of skin and flesh, as well as her tiny intestine, taken and placed over her tight shoulders. According to the autopsy, Chapman's uterus, bladder, and vaginal parts had all been removed. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were both killed on September 30, 1888. Stride's corpse was discovered at 1 a.m. in the field yard of Banner Street, now Henrik, in Whitechapel. A single 6-inch clear-cut incision across her neck had destroyed her left carotid artery and trachea before terminating under her right jaw, resulting in her death. Due to the lack of further mutilation on her corpse, it is uncertain if Stride was killed by the Ripper or whether he was stopped during the assault. Eddowes' body was discovered in a corner of Mitre Square in the city of London. 3/4 of an hour after Elizabeth's Stride's body was discovered, a piece of her intestine was totally cut and placed between her torso and left arm before her intestine was stretched over her right shoulder. Her neck was slit from ear to ear, and her belly was torn apart by a lengthy, deep, and jagged incisions. Eddowes' left kidneys and uterus had been removed, and her face had been harmed, with her nose slit, her cheeks split, and wounds measuring 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch vertically in size into each of her eyelids. Each of her cheekbone had also been cut with a triangle incision, with the tip pointing towards Edo's eyes. Mary Jane Kelly's corpse was found horrifically tortured and disemboweled on the bed in her single room at 13 Miller's Court of Dorset Street, Spitalfields, at 10:45 a.m. on Friday 9 November 1888. Her neck had been slit all the way down to her spine. Her belly had been almost completely emptied of organs, and her face had been hacked beyond all recognition. Her uterus, kidneys, and one breast had been put behind her head, and further viscera from her body, including portion of her abdomen and thigh, had been placed by her foot around the bed and on the bedside table. The heart was nowhere to be found at the murder site. Each of the 5 canonical killings happened at night, one or around a weekend, at the end of the month or the next week, except for Strike, whose attacker may have been prevented. The mutilation became increasingly horrific as the killing progressed. Kelly's body has been severely eviscerated, with her face gashed in all directions and the tissue of her neck ripped to the bone, but the heart was the only bodily organ missing from the crime scene. Chapman's uterus, bladder, and vaginal tissue were taken. Edo's uterus and left kidney were removed and her face was damaged. And Mary Ann Nichols' uterus and left kidney were removed and her face was mangled. The notion that these 5 canonical murders were all committed by the same person is based on contemporaneous sources that link them together to the exclusion of others. Some experts suggest that although some of the crimes were undoubtedly committed by a single individual, the other atrocities were committed by an unknown number of killers operating independently. The vast bulk of City of London police documents connected to the Whitechapel killings were lost during the Blitz. The remaining Metropolitan Police file provide an in-depth look into Victorian-era investigating procedures. Over 2,000 people were interrogated, thousands of people were probed, and 80 people were imprisoned. Following the killing of Strike and Eddowes, the Commissioner of the City Police, Sir James Fraser, announced a 500 reward for the capture of Jack the Ripper. Butchers, slaughterhouses, surgeons, and doctors were all blamed because of the style of the mutilations. According to a surviving report from Major Henry Smith, acting commissioner of the city police, the alibi of local butchers and slaughterers were examined, and they were removed from the investigations. According to Inspector Swanson's report to the Home Office, 76 butchers and slaughterhouses were visited, with the investigation comprising all of their staff for the preceding 6 months. Despite the fact that there is no evidence that the perpetrator had sexual relation with any of the victims, psychologists believe that the use of a knife to penetrate the victim and leave them on display in sexual degrading position with the wounds exposed indicates that the perpetrator obtained sexual pleasure from the attacks. Others disagree, dismissing such perspective as foolish speculations. Attempts to identify the murderer are hampered by a lack of surviving forensic evidence, as well as contradiction and inaccuracy of contemporaneous accounts. Others says the killer was well-educated upper-class guy, most likely a doctor or an aristocrat who moved to Whitechapel from wealthier area. The term ripology was coined to describe the study and examination of the Jack the Ripper case in an effort to determine who he was, and the murders has spawned a deluge of fiction. Suspects of years later include practically everybody remotely related to the case by current papers, as well as numerous prominent names who were never considered in the police inquiry, including a member of British royal family, an artist, and a surgeon. 3 suspects are listed in contemporary police files, including 3 in Sir Melville Mangdecton 1894 notes, despite circumstantial evidence against each of them. Authorities cannot agree on any of the speculation surrounding Jack the Ripper's real identity or career, and the number of identified suspects surpassed 100. Despite ongoing interest in the case, Jack the Ripper's identity has remained a mystery, but with new investigation through DNA matching, the unknown suspect might have been found. Researchers claim to have finally discovered Jack the Ripper's identity in a forensic study published in the Journal of Forensic Science. Aaron Kosminski, a 23-year-old Polish barber and top suspect at the time, was identified as the murderer. Kosminski was recognized as a suspect over a century ago, as he was listed again in a 2014 book by British businessman and Jack the Ripper researcher Russell Edwards. This is, however, the first time Edwards' DNA evidence has been published in a peer-reviewed journal. according to science. Jerry Lohelainen and David Miller performed genetic testing on a sick shell soaked with blood and sperm that was discovered near the corpse of the killer fourth victims, Catherine Eddowes. According to the magazines, researchers compared mitochondrial DNA pieces to samples from Eddowes and Kosminski's surviving relative and discovered a damaged dose of Kosminski family. The report also contained a physical evaluation of the killer, which suggested that he had brown hair and brown eyes. It refers to the sole reliable witness statement. The Jack the Ripper specialists believed the shawl had been tainted through time, and the study's finding may not satisfy them. An armchair investigator and author of the naming Jack the Ripper bought the shawl at an auction in 2007 and gave it to Lohelainen. "I viewed the one piece of forensic evidence in the whole history of the case," he told the newspaper in 2014. "I've been working on it for 14 years, and we finally figured out who Jack the Ripper was." The nature of the Jack the Ripper killings, as well as the victims' bleak circumstances, drew attention to the East End's deplorable living condition and galvanized public opposition to the overcrowded, filthy hovels. In the 2 decades after the killings, the worst of the slum were cleaned and removed, but the streets and some buildings survive, and the mystique of Jack the Ripper is still preserved by various guided tours of the murder spot and other areas related with the case. In the immediate aftermath of the murders and afterwards, Jack the Ripper became the children's boogeyman. By the 1960s, Jack the Ripper had evolved into the image of a predatory elite and was more often shown as a gentleman with a top hat. The opposition became the establishment as a whole, with the Jack the Ripper serving as a symbol of upclass exploitations. More than 100 non-fiction books have been written on the Jack the Ripper killings, making it one of the most well-known true crime cases. In the 1970s, Colin Wilson used the term ripology to describe the study of cases by both experts and amateurs. Their research had been published in Ripperana, Ripologist, and Ripper Notes. As of now, with proof through the DNA evidence, Aaron Kosminski is the mysterious Jack the Ripper that have been on the wanted list for more than 100 years, even after his death. But is it certain for sure Kosminski the true perpetrators? Only the victim that have been killed by Jack the Ripper that truly knows it.